All right, so we just talked about a couple of things. Public domain data being repurposed. We talked about this other one, integration of actual Muslim lives into the realities of the dominant paradigm. So you say when people are observed, they have an impact upon the observer. They change the observer's paradigm. If you take a racist and cause that racist to watch a African American family and to see and to make all those connections and see how they behave in much the same way as his family do, and cause that person to watch that family for a long time, that person will have a really hard time maintaining his hatred and distrust because he'll see how they're human beings, come to identify with them, and generally learn as much about himself as he does about them. That the impact of the observed upon the observer is not being understood by your opponent is a worthwhile argument that goes well with the transparency stuff. Okay? So let's go on to the next topic area, which was what?
TSA.
TSA. Okay. Well, if they're saying let's curtail the amount of I mean, I would ask, first of all, I'd want to try to distinguish between surveillance and searching you. Like, surveilling you implies that they're watching you. That's not going to imply necessarily other security measures. In my opinion, that your transparency K doesn't, it makes totally unnecessary additional security measures. Because if everybody's able to see everything that's going on, then somebody's going to notice that Joe over there. I mean, it won't ever even get to that point. Before Joe starts bombing stuff, there's enough interconnectivity at that point because everybody can watch everybody else, everybody can comment on everybody else's lives or whatever. Then it never even gets to that point. But if it does, it gets it gets curtailed early, right? Okay, but as far as TSA, as far as cars to get on that, I would say I would argue a couple of things. Uh, that airlines provide unique a unique threat vector. That it has a unique ability to negatively impact everything else, or something like that. Try to get um, some things that say even if TSA stuff is not very useful, if it stops even one attack, it's worthwhile. Because look, well, I mean, you could also argue this. Look at the impact that just one attack had upon world history. That with one attack at 9/11, we had a disastrously ill-advised war in Iraq. We had an ongoing war on terror, quote unquote, and we've had invasions of liberty that are nothing to do with privacy. It has instead to do with the fact that people are being detained indefinitely without adequate cause. That their due process rights aren't being protected and stuff. That they are being held non-transparently. The harms of that are non-transparency. We need to remedy that. So you want to argue that the harms of a substantial terrorist attack by airplanes have already been proven to be uniquely harmful to transparency. And so for that reason, we want to encourage more TSA stuff because even if it just redirects the terrorist attack to some other location, even if our opponents are completely right about it, and of course you're going to argue that they're not, but even if they are, it's worthwhile for us to prevent it specifically at the airport because it has these unique harms. And that's why the TSA presence, even if it's not very effective, what it does is it causes the terrorists to go attack someplace else. That's why it's perceived to be not effective. If you don't care about someplace else as much, then it could still be effective just by redirecting it away from that one place. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just casually cutting cheese.
Next topic.
Immigration.
Say it again.
Immigration.
Okay. Um, to curtail surveillance on immigration, I would imagine somebody's going to run some sort of border case that says the border patrol causes massive harms, and their harm doing ability is predicated upon their ability to see what's going on. They need that surveillance, or else they can't find the people they want to beat up to beat up.
We went up against a case like that. It was run by Harker.
Okay, that's a good idea for a case. All right. So you're attacking the border patrol basically, and you're saying we need uh, we need to shut that shit down. Well, number one, you want to turn that by saying if we want to shut that shit down, we need to surveil the border patrol, not surveil the immigration. We don't have to. In my opponent's universe, a country is required to either not enforce the border at all or enforce it in a way that produces massive civil rights harms. We agree these massive civil rights harms are bad, and we propose in our counter advocacy here that the same solution that we say is going to work for any of the problems they talk about is going to work here as well. We need to surveil more, not less. We need to surveil them. We need to all be able to see it.
What if they say like get rid of borders like completely?
Well, then what's
Like
the harm in surveilling? Where's their harms then? Why can't we surveil just to gather the data because data's good?
because surveillance like enforces a world of borders, which is bad.
Okay, so is it their position then that if we get rid of surveillance, we're going to get rid of borders?
Let me read Justin's illegal traveler case.
Oh, that.
Well, run it however you want, but what I'm telling you is it's not the way to impact that. You don't go like, oh, by cutting down surveillance, we're going to get rid of borders.
Right.
If you're going to run that on app, you say, by getting rid of surveillance, we're going to prevent the government from perpetuating status quo harms in which existing government agencies are causing actual harms in the real world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to do is stop those. Well, what are the harms? Well, this person here was shot to death for no good reason. Why? Because he's Mexican and the Border Patrol agents think they don't even care. They just think like it's funny to shoot Mexicans or something. And um, and so, yeah, we need to put a stop to that shit right now. We need to make it so they can't find them right now. There's a time urgency. There's exigent circumstances here. It might not be the single greatest way to stop it is to prevent them from surveilling. But if we were to do that right now, who knows how many Mexican lives we'd save in the coming days and weeks that would otherwise have been fallen victim to their brutality. So I say let's prioritize the urgent behavior here. That is to say, to prevent more of this done. It's done in our names. We are the Americans who these Border Patrol agents represent. When they shoot some poor Mexican teenager because they got too close to the fence, that's us shooting that poor Mexican teenager because they got too close to the fence. That's not what we want. It's not what I want. I'm sure it's not what my opponents want. So, Judge, what we need to do here is remember where the priority and the impacts are. We're talking about actual humans suffering actual harms from actual barbaric, brutal government agents. So let's vote for us. Like that.
Okay. Just keep on cutting trees. It's
Yeah.
really good.
If you have any other ideas, let me know and I'll come up with something.
Okay.
What's the other topic area?
On drugs. We have stuff
We
on
have
drugs.
that. What's up? What else is there?
Um, let me see. Let me go down the list then. Okay, there's drones. We didn't take
Well, you guys have some stuff on drones, right?
like
Mm,
yeah, but it's not
very little.
great.
All right. Well, let me see what I can come up with for drones.
is really good.
Cheese is always good.
Yeah, it's Gouda cheese. Really good.
Well, obviously it's good cheese.
Listen, I'm having a hard time coming up with good reasons to support curtailing drones. To me, it seems like a weak ass case to run.
Uh, Drones cause nuclear war or something.
Yeah, but
And that's our case.
I mean, that's not any different than any other case that just makes some weak ass link, you know? I want to know, what is it actually? Are there actually any good reasons to curtail drones? I don't think there are. I don't see why you want to run that case. It's more of you can always make a stretch, right? So why would you
So,
choose a case where you have to make a stretch?
okay, so here's an example case. Plan: the United States federal government should strengthen regulations pertaining to drone surveillance. Economy advantage, and like if we like basically like have more regulations, the economy will benefit, and if the economy declines, nuclear war. Terror.
How is the economy benefiting from more regulations?
It's like drones are now essential to community safety. Drones will uniquely substantially boost the U.S. economy, but regulations are key. Yeah, they have two cards on that. The rest is just nuclear war links. Then they have read a terror advantage about how drone regulations are modeled globally, and how like people follow the United States, and like we can use drones to like stop terror.
Um,
Uh, yeah, that's the advantages.
okay, well, look, I would say in regards to the drone thing, if I were going to answer to preserve drone technology, I would say any notion that centralized regulation can better produce a system that okay, it's wrong to think that a system of centralized control is a good way to preserve a market because it assumes that somebody with less knowledge of a situation and further away from that situation can better make judgments about how that situation ought to go than somebody who has ownership of that situation, knows more about it, and is closer to it, and who has his own interests aligned with it. There's no reason they have a burden to provide that says why somebody with less knowledge, less ownership, not near it, and fewer interests attached to it, and farther away is going to make a better decision. The answer they might provide is, well, the person who is disinterested is going to make a decision that has our interests in mind, whereas the person whose interest is going to make a decision with his interests in mind. Except the person who's making a decision with our interests in mind isn't representing our interests, he's representing his interests. His interests are, at that moment, aligned with going along with the government protocols regarding this. That's the interest that's being represented there. There's no reason to assume that this government protocol is a better evaluator of the actual thing we ought to do than the people on the ground who are making the decision themselves. So, whenever you're dealing with regulation, you ought to try to run something along those lines. Remind people that when we talk about government regulation, what we're saying is let's bring in somebody who doesn't know as much, who has no ownership of the situation, and have their decision making supplant the person who knows more and has ownership of it.
Yeah, that's good. Jeez. All right. Okay, let's see. The list is. We have
Muslim surveillance. TSA, immigration, drones. We already have war on drugs.
Drones, immigration, metadata, muscle surveillance, TSA, and governance. Okay.
Wait, when you write for metadata,
Okay, metadata, you want to go with the fact that repurposing thing, right? That you can use this metadata for things other than just terrorism prevention. A person who studies that carefully might come up with informative algorithms that explain how humans behave with one another in predictable ways that allows us to metacognate ourselves into more actualized and real versions of ourselves. But it requires us to be able to see that data in order to make whatever conclusions we're going to draw from it. Our opponents would presume that data collected for one reason can only be used for that reason, but that's simply not the case. Let me give you an example. When old map makers put certain information on a map, they didn't do it because they thought to themselves, someday this will be used to determine the date of this map. They did it for their own reasons. But we have found out after the fact that we can use that information to determine the dates of the map. So the same thing is true with metadata. They might have taken it in order to stop terrorists, but we might find out that we not that we can use it to stop terrorists, but instead that we can use it to come up with predictions of who's going to need mental health services and to prevent that from occurring based on metadata patterns, something like that. If we allow everybody access to all this data, then anybody can look through the data for patterns and try to find what they might find, and that's a good thing. And who knows what solutions it might produce.
But like, what if people are saying like metadata, like it doesn't matter whatever impact you have about how like it would benefit society. We'd still be dehumanizing humans because like humans acquire privacy.
Okay, so I would say this, if you're talking about surveillance. First of all, if they're only talking about government surveillance, and they're not, if they're being careful and they're not talking about like corporate surveillance dehumanizing or something, they're just talking about government surveillance, then you have to argue. I would go like this. Well, look, when I flew over from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City, how many human points did I lose? Because according to your reasoning here, I was dehumanized in the airport by the government when they surveilled me, right? Yes, I was? Or not? I was? Oh, okay. Well, how much less human am I than I was before? Are you trying to claim that you're more human than me because you live closer to here and you have to travel through fewer airports? How much more human than I do you think you are, you monster? Okay, I would. That's the thing. When you're talking about dehumanization, if surveillance causes dehumanization, then what? How is it different than? Am I dehumanizing you now by watching you write with a red pen, Anoop?
Yep, totally.
Do you hear that, Edmond? I'm dehumanizing Anoop right now. I'm dehumanizing you too.
How so?
I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to remove your humanness from you guys.
Yeah.
I think that's what you ask them. No matter what their warrant is on how they get to dehumanization, you say, dehumanization, huh? So, surveillance causes dehumanization. How much humanness do you have now? A lot or a little? If surveillance causes dehumanization, are people who are on TV and is seen by millions of people, are they not even remotely human? Are they even a little bit human anymore? Or are they just completely animals now? I mean, make fun of it because it's not a real thing. It's critical theory bullshit. Now, watch your own art. What kind of impacts do you have that are like that you might have a hard time with?
Wait, for metadata, what if they run like information overload or something?
You say that only applies if we assume we're using it to look for terrorists.
Okay.
Our whole point is that we're not using it to look for terrorists. Why is everybody so obsessed with terrorists? Gosh, you guys, you're crazy about these terrorists. That's why we need to open it up to everybody anyway, and then everybody's eyes can get on it. Then we can all look at it and see what happens. That's the thing. More access, more information. That's what you say. That's always the solution. That's your warrant, basically. What am I looking for? This. And this. All right. What now? Anything? You need any more questions for me or anything? All right. Got some cards.
Oh, Strauss, like when they ask us things like, for our amendment case, when they ask us stuff like, how are you gonna enforce this and how are you gonna pass this and stuff? Like, could you just talk about like link of omission and stuff?
How are you gonna pass it?
No, like because yesterday with Felix, like before Edmond and everybody else came on, we were talking about like link of omission and stuff, and it's like if I'm not directly amending the status quo, the litigation has the right to assume that it has to be done. It will be done as it's already done in the status quo, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, what do you mean? So, how does that affect the constitutional amendment case?
No, I'm just like saying like, would that be considered like if somebody was trying to run vagueness on us or something? Would link of omission be considered a vague answer?
Well, here's what happens, right? If they ask you, how do you enforce it? Possibly just read like our genuine impact, because as we see through empirical evidence, a lot of the amendments, they have caused actual change. There's no need to enforce it. The fact that an amendment is passed has already caused change, right? And if they ask like time frame,
As soon as the next like Congress meeting starts or something, right?
not necessarily. No, time frame would be from when the amendment is passed and however long it takes for the amendment to, like, for its effects to happen, which might take like a couple of years. But that shouldn't be an important issue. If they try and run statements against you because we don't offer a specific time frame, you just be like, they're not addressing the key warrants of the actual argument.
You say what our change does is it enables individuals to use legal tools differently. They want it, and they want us to give you a specific time frame what's going to accomplish the impact. It's immediate. As soon as it's needed, now an individual is now able to use a tool to deal with their problem in a more effective way, in a more just way, in a more fair way. What kind of problem are they having? They're having a problem with a government that is oppressing them, that is violating their rights, that is causing them direct measurable harms. Well, what measurable harms? They are having their property rights violated. That means they are being victimized by a crime. So, being victimized by criminals, being the victim of a crime, well, I need no further explanation as to why that's harmful. You've been victimized. You have established clearly that this property is not to be trespassed upon. Whether you said it or not is a default assumption. They have violated that rule that you've established. They have done so without your permission. They have violated you and what you own and said, we own that. We own you. They have made ownership claims upon your person and your stuff. That's thievery. There's a harm to being violated by criminals that is implicit to the violation outside of any dollar amount. So you got to impact it a little bit like that, okay? But next, go on. Where was I? I lost my place. What am I talking about? What's going on?
We were talking about like the harms of the amendment and stuff.
Oh, the status quo thing, right? Like where you're saying the neg should be able to assume that everything that's not changed in the policy AF is going to be the same as it is in the status quo, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. Except the reason I have a problem with it is we know that's not the case because the AF can perm. That's my answer to it. We know that's not the case because the AF can perm. If it were the case that neg could assume that everything not indicated specifically in the AF plan is exactly the same as it is now, then the AF would not be able to perm anything.
Okay. Okay. Wow. If they like, so if we run vagueness on somebody and it's like you haven't answered so and so in your speech, so now you can't answer it anymore, and they're like, no, you're being abusive. How would you answer that?
What are they accusing you of being abusive about?
Like if you run vagueness on somebody and then you're like, judge, they can't answer this anymore because the time frame of that speech that they were supposed to answer it in is already passed. They can never go back to that. Therefore, they should not be able to answer this vagueness point or something like that. And they're like, in their next speech, they're like, that's abusive, judge. Because basically they're saying that we're not allowed to answer one of their arguments.
Here, why are you making that argument? Why are you saying they're not allowed to answer it?
Because that's like vagueness. And it's like, that's how Felix tells us to run it. He's like, they can't answer it anymore because that time has passed. They're only allowed to answer, and they should only have this in their 1AC or the cross-X in between, because then basically they've ruined our strongest like point of offense or something like that.
That's too fucking theory. No. Don't run it like that. Don't run it like that. You run it like you say they're welcome to answer it now, but I mean, so you say absolutely they can attempt to meet these burdens now. However, they've argued themselves into a double bind or contradiction of some sort. Okay? Run it like that instead. Then you're not subject to abuse. You say, it's not our fault that they argued this point, and now to answer our point, they'd need to say this. But if they make this argument, then they are running afoul of the other thing. Run it like that. Okay, so like, what? Let's practice using this thing on something. Okay, what could you try to run? You be neg Anoop, and Edmond, you make it. You're the AF.
Oh yeah, Felix and I did this yesterday.
Okay,
What
but
if they do the kudos thing?
what's the kudos thing?
It's to be affirmative to argue against themselves.
What?
What if like people do the kudos thing? We say what Strauss said. And then they're just like, therefore, the defense is instructing the affirmative to debate itself, which defeats the purpose of debate.
I would argue the
How?
following thing. I would say, um, my opponents are basing this round on a theory argument that says we're forcing them to argue against themselves. Now, we're going to accept that they are pinned to that position. We are now going to present counter arguments that could be issued that are not arguing against their own case, and then present the framework arguments that would be answers to our case, and say they can't answer this. They've committed to their position. Now we've demonstrated it. We've showed it demonstrably false. They didn't make any of these arguments. They can't take them now. The reason they can't take them now is because they're committed to that other argument. And if they take these, that contradicts that argument.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to show that argument is false. If they then say, okay, fine, we kick that argument, then this argument over here is true now that you're saying. Well, then, Judge, at that point, they are saying, we don't have to have any arguments. We don't have to be held to our words. You can't make decisions in the round because none of our words stick. If that's the case, none of my words stick either, except for this last one. We win. So, Judge, I've affirmed, let's go with their mechanism if you want, but that means none of their own words stick. And I don't say use that mechanism on these sticks. These words, AF wins. So, Judge, you've got to simply, at this point, vote for AF. They've dug themselves a labyrinth of double binds so deep that they could never get out of it in a million years. They have nothing. They're dead in the water. Okay, you gotta hammer them. When they run theory like that, you gotta fucking hammer them. They can't make the app argue against itself. You prove to them that you don't have to argue against yourself to win against this case. How can you do that? You say you can argue simply that transparency is bad, right? I mean, can't you just argue that? No, secrecy is good. Transparency is bad. Is that? I mean, you guys feel me on this? Why is that such a weak argument? Like, is it the case, in fact, that you're forcing them to argue against their own case? What's their case?
Edmond, what was the case that they ran that in?
SSRA. Enforce SSRA.
What's SSRA?
Like the State Surveillance Repeal Act or something like that. And it's supposed to, like, protect whistleblowers.
And you said more transparency is good because that'll protect whistleblowers better?
We just BS'd everything. Like, they're not accounting for, like, where the greatest harms are, so they're not, like, blah, blah, blah.
No, Edmond won that round because he was like, whistleblowers are a form of transparency, as they said so far.
That's the only reason why we won.
Well, yeah, you say, look, if it were in fact true that forcing someone to argue against their own case meant that you lose, then all everyone would need to do on AF is argue a neg case.
Wait, but then why were they saying that the app needs to argue against their own case?
Because essentially what we're doing by saying that, what happened was that we were like, look, they stated that whistleblowers are a form of transparency, so we access all their impacts, blah, 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 blah. And they're just like, oh, you guys are making us argue against our own case, which is abusive.
Oh.
And we're just like, no, you stated it yourself in Cross X.
Yeah, well, that's the answer. We're not making you. You made yourself when you said this.
And we won with that argument, so, yeah.
Good.
And then, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, what?
It's like, you guys got, like, slaughtered on
But then, otherwise, if they didn't say that, but you could still access them because they're like non-exclusive arguments, you could just be like how would you answer that? You just be like they're non-exclusive arguments, so yeah.
Okay, what else are you concerned about? What else do we need to talk about? Anything? Or you just want to cut, or what?
Well, God.
Alright, cool. I'm going to stop the recording then, at this point.
Rice is nice.
Yeah, it is. Nothing quite as nice as rice, that's what they say. Except for lice. Lice are as nice as rice. Thanks for watching Talk with Fence, people.